AITA for asking guests to pay for dinner when they stay overnight at my place. I 45 female live with my husband and 2 kids 14 male and 17 female in a cozy but not so large house. We've always been the kind of family that loves to host. There's something so heartwarming about filling the house with the sounds of laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the smell of food cooking in the kitchen. For me, hosting is more than just having people over, it's about creating memories, bonding with loved ones, and just soaking in those moments that make life feel full. That being said, I think it's time to admit that hosting is exhausting, and lately, it's been a huge financial strain. Let me give you some context. When people come over, we don't do casual hangouts or microwave meals. No, I'm the person who plans out meals, cooks from scratch, and makes sure everyone leaves my table feeling like they've eaten a feast. If it's a weekend visit, I'll make a big breakfast spread, pancakes, eggs, bacon, the works. Lunch might be homemade sandwiches or pasta, and dinner. Oh, that's usually something fancier, like roasted chicken with sides or a slow-cooked stew. I genuinely love doing this, it makes me happy to see people enjoying what I've made. But the cost? Oof. It's a lot, especially because most of our guests are family or close friends who come to stay for several days at a time. Take last month, for example. My sister, her husband, and their 3 kids came to visit us. I adore them, and we always have a great time together, but they stayed for 5 days. 5 days. Now, don't get me wrong, they weren't being unreasonable, and I was happy to have them. But feeding 5 extra mouths, on top of my own family of 4, and let's not forget that my teenage son eats like he's training for a competitive eating contest, for 5 days. It completely wiped out my grocery budget. Their kids are growing, too, so they were constantly snacking, asking for seconds at meals, and rummaging through the pantry. By the time they left, I was exhausted and broke. When I mentioned the financial strain to my husband, he was super supportive and practical as always. He said something like, "Why don't we just ask people to pitch in for food? It doesn't have to be awkward, just frame it as a way to keep things fair." At first, I hesitated because, in my mind, hosting has always been about giving, not asking. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Why should hosting be a one-sided thing where I'm footing the bill for everything? We're all adults here, right? Surely, people would understand. Fast forward to last weekend, and this is where things went a little sideways. My friend Katie and her husband were planning to come over for a weekend visit. Katie and I go way back, we've been friends since college, and she stayed at our place plenty of times. So, in the spirit of being transparent, I decided to let her know ahead of time about the new arrangement. I sent her a casual text saying something like, "Hey, we're so excited to have you guys over this weekend. Just a heads up, we've had a busy month with bills, so we're asking everyone to chip in for food this time. Hope that's okay." Katie responded pretty quickly with a simple, "Okay," and I figured that was the end of it. Problem solved, right? Wrong. When Katie and her husband arrived, everything seemed fine at first. We hugged, caught up, and started prepping dinner together. But as soon as we sat down to eat, the comments started. At first, it was just Katie joking around, saying things like, "Wow, this is some premium dining, I guess we're getting our money's worth." I laughed it off because, honestly, it didn't seem like a big deal. But then her husband chimed in with a sarcastic, "Next time, we might as well just stay at a hotel. At least they include breakfast." That one stung a little. As the night went on, the comments kept coming, little jabs here and there about how expensive it must be to stay at our house and how they'd better make sure they didn't leave crumbs, or I might charge them a cleaning fee. At one point, Katie even said, "I didn't realize hospitality came with a price tag," in this super pointed tone. I felt so uncomfortable. I didn't want to make a scene, so I just smiled and changed the subject, but deep down, I was fuming. After they left, Katie texted me, and I thought maybe it would be an apology or at least some sort of acknowledgement of the awkwardness. Nope. Instead, she said something like, "I've been thinking, and I just have to say, it's kind of over the top to ask friends to pay for food. Hospitality isn't a business, you know." That message hit me like a ton of bricks. Was I really in the wrong here? I decided to talk to some other friends about it to get their perspective, and the responses were all over the place. Some people were totally on my side, saying things like, "It's not unreasonable to ask guests to pitch in, especially if they're staying multiple days, and, honestly, I'd be happy to chip in if it meant I didn't have to cook or worry about anything." But then there were others who said I was being ungenerous and that it's just part of being a host. One person even said, "If you can't afford to host, don't invite people over." That one hurt because it's not like I don't want to host, I just don't want to go broke doing it. Hosting used to bring me so much joy, but now I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. If I don't ask for help, I'm drowning in expenses. If I do, I risk alienating people I care about. So, Reddit, I need your honest opinion. AITA for asking guests to help cover food costs when they stay at my house? Should I just suck it up and keep footing the bill, or is it fair to ask for a little support? Be brutally honest, I can take it. Update 1. It's been a few weeks since my original post, and I wanted to start by saying thank you to everyone who took the time to comment. I read every single reply, and I was honestly blown away by how many of you could relate to my situation. Whether you agreed with me or not, your feedback gave me a lot to think about. And, oh boy, has a lot happened since then. To recap for those who missed the original post, I had started asking overnight guests to chip in for food costs when they stayed at my house. It was a practical solution to what had become a big financial strain for my family, but not everyone took it well. My friend Katie, in particular, was less than supportive. She made jokes, her husband threw out passive-aggressive comments, and after they left, she even texted me saying I was being over the top. It stung, but I tried to move on, especially since the feedback here on Reddit helped me feel more justified in my decision. Well, fast forward to last week, and things took an unexpected turn. You see, as the holiday season started creeping closer, my extended family began planning our usual holiday gathering. For years, my house has been the go-to spot for Christmas. It's not because I have the biggest house, I don't, or the most central location, again, I don't. It's because I've unintentionally become the designated hostess. Somewhere along the line, it just became tradition. My sister once joked that I was the hostess with the mostest, and I guess everyone took that literally. Normally, I don't mind hosting. I love the holidays, and there's something magical about having everyone under one roof, sharing food, and celebrating together. But after this past year of hosting multiple guests and footing the bill for so many meals, I realized I wasn't ready to dive headfirst into another financially draining event. The thought of spending hundreds, if not more, on food, drinks, and decorations for 20+ people made my stomach churn. So, during a casual family group call, I decided to suggest something new. I said, maybe we could celebrate at someone else's house this year, just to switch things up. I fully expected pushback or at least some hesitation, but to my surprise, everyone seemed thrilled by the idea. My sister immediately chimed in, "That's a great idea. Katie, why don't you host this year?" Now, let me pause for a second to remind you all who Katie is. Yes, the same Katie from my original post, the one who ridiculed my decision to ask guests to pitch in for food. Katie has a lovely, spacious house, and she's hosted small gatherings before, so it wasn't exactly an unreasonable suggestion. But the look on her face, well, the silence on the phone, but I could feel the look, told me she wasn't thrilled. She laughed nervously and tried to deflect, saying something vague like, "Oh, I'll have to check with husband." That's when my sister, who is known for her bluntness, piped up, "Come on, Katie, you've got the space, and you don't have to worry about splitting costs, right?" I nearly spit out my coffee. The shade was so obvious I almost felt bad for Katie. Almost. Katie reluctantly agreed to look into it, and we all moved on with the call. I figured she'd either come up with an excuse or grudgingly go along with the plan. But then, the next day, she dropped a bomb in the family group chat. She sent a long message that basically said, "Hey everyone. We're happy to host this year, but hosting a large group is a big responsibility. To make it manageable, we're asking everyone to contribute $50 per person for food and drinks. Let us know if that works for you." I had to read the message twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Katie, the same person who had mocked me for asking guests to chip in, was now doing the exact same thing. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. But of course, things didn't end there. The group chat immediately exploded with reactions. Some people were supportive. My cousin Sarah replied, "Fair enough. Hosting is expensive, and I'm happy to pitch in." A few others followed suit, agreeing that it was a reasonable request. But then my sister, the queen of keeping receipts, jumped in and said, "Wait a minute. Isn't this exactly what you gave grief for when she asked guests to help with food costs? Hospitality isn't a business, right?" I swear I could hear the collective gasp through the screen. Katie tried to defend herself, saying that hosting a holiday gathering for so many people was different, and that she didn't want to go into debt over one event. She said she was just being practical and that it wasn't fair to expect her to shoulder all the costs. Which, to be honest, is exactly what I had been saying all along. But the hypocrisy was too much for some people to ignore. The group chat quickly turned into a debate. Some family members were fine with the $50 request, saying it was cheaper than eating out or hosting their own gathering. Others flat out refused, saying they shouldn't have to pay to attend a family holiday. My sister was particularly vocal, pointing out that Katie had no problem criticizing me for doing the same thing. Katie, in turn, accused my sister of stirring the pot, which only escalated things further. As for me, I stayed quiet. I wasn't about to get dragged into the drama, especially since I felt like I'd already been vindicated. Watching Katie squirm under the same scrutiny she'd put me through was more satisfying than I'd like to admit. But at the same time, I couldn't help feeling a little bad for her. Hosting is hard, and if she'd just been more supportive of me in the first place, maybe things wouldn't have gotten so messy. In the end, the holiday plans are still up in the air. Some family members have decided to do smaller celebrations at their own homes instead, and others are considering skipping the big gathering altogether. Katie hasn't said much since her initial message, and I'm curious to see if she'll stick to her $50 request or backtrack to save face. As for me, I'm secretly hoping this whole ordeal means I'll get a much-needed break from hosting this year. I've already told my husband and kids that if we don't end up traveling for the holidays, we're going to have a low-key Christmas at home, just the four of us. No big feasts, no stressful cleanup, and definitely no arguments over who pays for what. Update 2. I'm back with what I think will be the final update to this long, twisty saga. If you've been following my story, you'll know it all started when I asked my guests to chip in for food costs during their stays, sparking some major drama, especially with my friend Katie, who later found herself in a similar situation when my family volunteered her to host the holidays. Things escalated when Katie announced she wanted everyone to pay $50 per person, which, as you can imagine, didn't go over well. Well, here's how everything played out, from the chaos of that decision to how we ultimately salvaged the holidays. After Katie sent her infamous $50 per person message, our family group chat turned into an all-out debate. I wish I could say it was a polite discussion, but that would be a lie. My sister, always one to speak her mind, was quick to call Katie out for her hypocrisy, pointing out how she had mocked my pay-to-stay approach just a few weeks earlier. Katie, for her part, doubled down, insisting that hosting a large holiday gathering was totally different from hosting casual weekend guests. She argued that it wasn't fair to expect her to spend hundreds of dollars on food and drinks for everyone, and honestly, I couldn't disagree with her. After all, that was the same argument I'd made when this whole thing started. But the irony of the situation was impossible to ignore, and I could feel the tension building in the chat. As the back and forth continued, it became clear that no one was happy. Some family members supported Katie's request, saying it was reasonable to split the costs for such a big event. Others were firmly against it, arguing that holidays should be about generosity, not spreadsheets. My sister was particularly vocal, accusing Katie of being a hypocrite and turning the holidays into a business transaction. Meanwhile, I stayed silent, watching the drama unfold like a spectator at a very messy family reunion. I'll admit, there was a small part of me that felt vindicated watching Katie squirm. It was like seeing karma play out in real time. But mostly, I just wanted the situation to be resolved so we could all move on and enjoy the holidays. Eventually, my brother stepped in with a compromise that changed everything. He suggested we step away from the stress and politics of hosting at someone's home and instead rent an event space where everyone could gather on neutral ground. His reasoning was simple but effective. Hosting in a shared space would distribute the responsibilities and financial burdens more evenly, removing the pressure from any one person. It was an unconventional idea, and at first, there was a brief pause in the family group chat as people digested it. But slowly, the responses started trickling in, and surprisingly, most of the family seemed on board. For many, the thought of avoiding the chaos of hosting in their own home, or dealing with another person's rules, was enough to sway them. Katie was, predictably, the last to agree. Her response came in late, and while she said she was fine with it, her tone made it clear she wasn't thrilled. Shortly afterward, she sent me a private message saying she felt like the family was ganging up on her and that this wasn't how she'd envisioned the holidays. I just stared at her message for a while, unsure of what to say. Part of me wanted to point out that this was exactly what I had been trying to avoid when I first brought up splitting costs, but I decided it wasn't worth the energy. At that point, I was emotionally drained from the entire ordeal and just wanted to move forward. Once the decision was finalized, things started falling into place faster than I expected. My brother took charge of finding a venue and located a local community center that rented out a beautiful hall, complete with enough tables and chairs for our sprawling family. The space was spacious yet inviting, with large windows that let in plenty of natural light and a clean, neutral aesthetic that we could easily decorate to fit the holiday spirit. When he shared photos of the space in the group chat, everyone seemed impressed, and for the first time in weeks, the family chat felt less like a battleground and more like a planning hub. With the venue settled, we moved on to dividing up responsibilities. My brother proposed a simple, fair system. Each household would contribute a set amount to cover the rental fee, and we'd assign tasks for food, drinks, and decorations. People volunteered for different roles based on their strengths. My cousin who's great at baking offered to make desserts, my aunt with a green thumb promised to bring some fresh garlands and poinsettias, and a few of the younger adults took charge of picking up drinks and setting up the bar. My husband and I opted to handle desserts alongside my cousin, which felt manageable and gave me a sense of participation without the overwhelming stress I usually felt as the default host. For the first time in years, I wasn't consumed by a sense of impending doom in the lead-up to the holidays. I wasn't frantically writing grocery lists, reorganizing furniture to make room for guests, or wondering how I'd find the energy to cook a full holiday feast while entertaining a house full of people. Instead, I actually felt excited. There was something liberating about knowing that this wasn't all on me, that the burden was truly shared. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt this light leading up to the holidays. When the day of the gathering finally arrived, I was blown away by how perfect everything looked. The event space was transformed into a festive haven, with string lights strung across the ceiling, tables draped in deep red tablecloths, and cheerful holiday centerpieces featuring candles, pine cones, and sprigs of greenery. A small Christmas tree stood in one corner, decorated with ornaments and twinkling lights, and there was even a designated kids area with crafts and games to keep the little ones entertained. It was cozy and welcoming, yet spacious enough that no one felt cramped or crowded. The food was a sight to behold. We decided on a potluck-style arrangement where each family brought their assigned dishes, and the result was a feast that put even my most ambitious holiday dinners to shame. There were trays of roasted vegetables, steaming casseroles, platters of turkey and ham, fresh salads, and, of course, desserts galore. The variety was incredible, and the best part was that no one felt overburdened. I think everyone secretly appreciated the chance to show off their cooking skills without having to single-handedly prepare an entire meal. The atmosphere was relaxed in a way I hadn't experienced in years. People were laughing, eating, and catching up without the underlying tension that often comes with hosting at someone's house, tension over who was doing too much or too little, or over whether the host was feeling overwhelmed. For once, it felt like everyone was truly present and enjoying themselves, instead of worrying about logistics or expectations. Even Katie, who had been so resistant to the idea initially, seemed to be enjoying herself. At one point, I overheard her telling my brother that it was nice not to have all the pressure on one person. She didn't say it to me, of course, but hearing her acknowledge it, even indirectly, felt like a small victory. The best part, for me, was how much I was able to enjoy the day. In past years, I would have been running around my house, making sure everything was perfect, barely sitting down to eat or talk with anyone. But this time, I actually got to relax. I spent time catching up with my cousins, watching the kids play, and savoring the amazing food everyone had brought. It reminded me of what the holidays are supposed to be about: connection, joy, and shared memories. Of course, not everything was perfect. There were still a few grumbles from family members who missed the tradition of being at someone's house, and I could tell Katie was still a little salty about being volunteered to host in the first place. But overall, it felt like a win for everyone. The drama that had been brewing for weeks finally seemed to dissipate, and by the end of the day, even my sister and Katie were chatting and laughing like nothing had happened. This whole experience has been a roller coaster, but it's taught me some important lessons. First and foremost, it's okay to set boundaries, even when it comes to family and close friends. Hosting should be something you do because you enjoy it, not because you feel obligated or pressured. And if you need help, whether it's financial, logistical, or emotional, it's okay to ask for it. The people who truly care about you will understand and support you. I've decided that I'm only going to host overnight guests or big gatherings if we all agree to share the costs and responsibilities up front. It's not about being stingy or ungenerous, it's about being realistic and making sure everyone is on the same page. I've already had a few conversations with friends and family about this, and most people seem to understand where I'm coming from. As for Katie, I'm not sure if our friendship will ever fully recover from this whole ordeal, but I'm okay with that. Sometimes, these situations reveal who's really in your corner and who isn't. Thank you to everyone who shared their thoughts and advice. It really helped me navigate what turned out to be a much bigger situation than I ever expected. And to anyone out there who's feeling overwhelmed by the demands of hosting, just remember, you don't have to do it all alone. Sometimes, the best memories are made when everyone pitches in. May your celebrations be drama-free, your guests be grateful, and your hosting efforts be rewarded with wine, good vibes, and maybe even a little extra cash in the jar.